And we are live. Hello, everybody. It's the pre-show for today's N10-007. It's Network Plus today. What was I thinking? We're doing Network Plus Q&A. I've got to get the lights on. I don't have the lights on yet. See how dark it is? It's spooky. Let's get these on in the back, which I don't think you'll see in that shot. There we go. Oh, see a little bit of light there. And let's get the lights going. Let's get this brought down. This needs to come down as well. And let's get the lights on in the front. That's just a mouse click. Boom. Okay. Now we're doing it. Hello, chat room. Good to see you. Let's pop you out so I can see you a little better. And we'll bring the chat over here. You can see I'm running just a minute and a half behind today for some reason. And this right here, there we go. We'll pause me. Actually, this needs to be on health. There we go. Hi, everybody. I can't hear myself yet because I don't have my earbuds on. We'll do that in a moment. Get the monitors, the in-ear monitors up and running. There we go. That's not so bad. Hey, everybody. Hello, North Carolina and Denver, Colorado, and San Antonio, Texas, and New York City. New York City. Oh, we got a few minutes before we get started. We got about 7 minutes before things are going here. Let's check. Recordings are here. Recordings are here. I think everything looks good there. I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't know if I remembered everything. Let's get the mixer a little bit closer to me here. There we go. Hello, South Carolina. I'm assuming that's South Carolina, not Southern California. Although California is here, as is St. Vincent. Welcome, everybody. Let's get, this is in the way. Let's put that right there. Let's clean up our mess a little bit. Hello, Cayman Islands. I do love the Cayman Islands. Been there before. Oh, what just happened to my iPad? There, went a little wonky there. Let's get this one a little bit down a little bit more. And good. Everything is working well here. Okay, lights, cameras. This all looks pretty good. We've got those things. You know what it is? It's warm. Once you turn the lights on, it gets warm. I got new lights in front of me, which you can't really tell. If you look, it looks the same. Actually, I think it looks a little better than it used to in the front. But I've got new lights. I got to get rid of the old ones that are there. But I'm still using older LEDs behind me. I think those are getting kind of bright too. I was considering swapping those out. I don't know yet. And doing that piece as well. Let's see if I have air. I need air. I need cool air, everybody. We've got all Network Plus today. This should be pretty good. I've got Network Plus Q&A here. I've got running here. Yep, everything looks good there. I like it. Now, I just did 2 live study groups last week, so it wasn't that hard to get everything running. And we are recording a lot of Network Plus right now for the N10-008. For those of you following who have subscribed to my YouTube channel, you already saw there were new videos out today for the N10-008. It's probably going to be a few months before you really start to see a good mix of N10-008 materials available on the market. But the videos will be done soon enough. I've got a ton of them that are already recorded, and I'm just going through the process of editing right now. And then we'll sit back down and record some more, and it's going very, very smoothly. The network, I do like the Network Plus. I like that. I like that exam. It's a lot of fun. It's probably the part of my jobs that I have had throughout IT that I've enjoyed the most are the ones that are very network heavy. A lot of the network administration, design, and ultimately IT security is so heavily network focused. That sort of is where I spend a lot of time. Okay. I think our questions are up. I got that ready to go. I think we're in pretty good shape, everybody. All right. Hello, Houston, Texas. Hello, Arizona. Thanks for being here. California's checked in. We got a lot going on. A lot of people hanging out. We got 3 minutes to go, everyone. 3 minutes until we get started. This is not the live stream, obviously. You'll see me in the front whenever we get that running. Cameras look good. I fixed my problem with the flashing of my laptop screen, which was this one. Used to flash a little bit during the live streams. It was a bad HDMI cable. Who would have known? It's really inexpensive cable that was plugged in. Technically, it was plugged into a converter, which converted it to SDI. And it was right there at that converter that did that. Follow along the questions by opening up a new browser window and going to professormesser.com/QA. Or you can run the Socrative student app. So threw the HDMI cable out. It's gone. Thrown into the garbage, replaced with one that apparently is working better. It seems to be working better. It was working better. I could really make it, by barely touching it, I was able to make it flicker on my screen. So I was able to at least reproduce it, which is great. The nice part is that with the new cable in place, this looks a little bit better. Whenever that starts to flake out, when I'm recording my videos for training, it messes up the codec, the recording process that I'm using. I record right here. And it messes that up so that suddenly the desktop side is not looking very good. It has these big gaps in it, has noise in it, and I have to go through and correct that, which is time consuming. So it's nice that's working. That's one less thing to have to worry about. I wish I could go straight SDI, and just be all SDI, but that's not reality. That's not how the world works, people. We got a minute to go. We may convert over to N10-008 in a couple of months. There's still very few books available. There's very few N10-008 study resources available. So I don't want to jump into that and encourage people to do that. Now I've got other flickering going on. What was that? I wasn't looking at it, but you guys probably saw something happening there. So who knows? There's always something. It's always something fun to do, dealing with the flickering. Something odd that needs to be corrected. A cable that needs to be mounted. Nope, it was my laptop. It did not correct all the flickering. Oh, boy. Just more things to go through. Oh, well, we'll figure this out. Yeah, I think it's actually over here that's happening. Weird. So we'll see on the stream. We'll see how this goes. This may be just nope, it's definitely the laptop flickering. Boy, that's frustrating. So let's do a quick check. And fill that in. See what we can do with it. Well, we'll see. What's the worst that can happen, everybody? We'll figure it out. Eventually, I will be able. I know, I jinxed everything. But if I don't tell you the story, how are you ever going to know the way this goes? Let's start this study group, everybody. I think I should be able to bring up Keynote here. I should get a green light there. Play button. Very nice. Let's get this going. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2021 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group, coming to you live from our studios here with a flickering screen and everything else that we've been talking about in the beginning of the pre-show. Those of you listening on the podcast missed the whole 10 minutes before we get started, but we have so many great things to go through today. We're so glad you're able to join us. Today, we're going to go through topics and questions that come directly from the N10-007 Network Plus exam. If you would like to follow along with us, you can follow along right here by going to professormesser.com/QA on our flashing screen. It's there just to make sure you're paying attention. That's the way I'm positioning it anyway. If you go to professormesser.com/QA, there will be a question there waiting for you. There's also plenty to look at over on an app. If you have an app for this, it is the Socrative Student app. You'll find that in your favorite app store. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. That will get you the information you need to be able to join us on that app. And if you do any of those things, either one will work for you. They both show the same information. There will be a question waiting for you that says this. The question asks, a network administrator is configuring SSO. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this task? Would that be TACACS, Kerberos, Radius, local authentication, or LDAP? Now, this is a question from last month, so let's see how much you remember. You can answer that by going to professormesser.com/QA, and we will be back to that answer in just a moment. Well, we've got lots to go through today. We are going to look at questions from Network Plus, but of course we have a weekly Network Plus pop quiz that we put on our website. You can find that at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram. Just depends on which one you like to go to. We also have lots of videos that are being released here shortly. In fact, I put some new ones out even today for the N10-008 course. That course is going along quite well. You'll find all of those videos at professormesser.com/YouTube. That will get you pretty much a list of all of the N10-008. There is, of course, something you can go through there. You can step through and see all of the videos that are there, and there's a lot more coming as well. So plenty to look at. Again, there are two choices for Network Plus exams that you could take right now. As we sit here in September of 2021, you could take the N10-007. The N10-007 exam was released on March the 1st of 2018. It will retire in June of 2022. So you've got so many months available before you have to worry about retiring on this particular exam. So if you are planning to take your Network Plus right now, this is the one I would recommend you take. There's just not a lot of books out yet. This was just released. The newest version was just released this month. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I tell people you should study from materials that are available. And it doesn't matter which one you take, you earn the same Network Plus certification. This is an exam that is 90 minutes long. You'll get a maximum of 90 questions. The score that you need to earn is on a scale between 100 and 900, and that score is a 720. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. Now, for those of you that have been watching this, and as I've mentioned, there is a new exam out. There's just not a lot of study materials out quite yet. The new exam is the N10-008. It was released just last week, September 15th. It was released. So this is a brand new exam with 40% of the exam is brand new topics. So you don't want to use old materials that are for the N10-007 to study for the N10-008. That would be a horrible idea. You will surely not do well on your exam. Don't do that. That means this exam is probably going to be around until at least March of 2025. And what I tell people is don't worry about taking a newer or older exam. Take either one, whichever one you're comfortable with. You just need to take it and pass it because it doesn't matter which one you take. You earn exactly the same cert. Employers don't care which version of the exam you take. They could change the exam version every day. Employers only care that you're Network Plus certified. And whether you take and pass the N10-007 or take and pass the N10-008, you will absolutely have access and be able to call yourself a Network Plus certified professional for 3 years, regardless. So take the one that you have available right now. I'd recommend the N10-007. Absolutely. Don't forget on my website are plenty of N10-007 study materials. My entire Network Plus Success Bundle is out there with my course notes, my exam hacks ebook, exclusive Q&A access. Plenty more is there. You can find out more at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We do have this live stream available for you to see immediately afterwards on YouTube. If you would like an audio-only version, especially a podcast version of it, you will see that at professormesser.com/podcast. I have podcast versions for the A+ study groups, the Network Plus study group, and the Security Plus study group. That's an easy way to keep track of what we're doing here. We've also got on the YouTube side our YouTube video descriptions, which have timestamps because my marketing manager, Lori, has to sit through this whole thing and put timestamps into this. Everybody say hi to Lori. She is absolutely putting in a lot of valuable information about questions when we answer them, callers that call in. All those timestamps are there. You'll find it on the YouTube video description at professormesser.com/YouTube. There is also 24/7 chat. If I'm not here doing the streaming live, I'm usually sitting here anyway, working on something. And I also have my Discord up and running. The Discord for Professor Messer can be found at professormesser.com/Discord. Didn't see that one coming. You can also click the icons top right on professormesser.com to get to Discord as well. If you're ready to take your exam, any of your CompTIA exams, it sure would be nice if you could get a break on the price. If you're not a student, there's not a lot of options available. But I have created a set of discounted vouchers on my site that you can find at professormesser.com/voucher. These are already discounted. You don't need any special coupon codes. You don't have to go find the voucher code that might be out there somewhere. That's just a waste of time for everyone. Instead, the vouchers are just discounted. They're just discounted and available for everyone, whether you're taking your A+, your CASP, your Network Plus, Security Plus, or anything else. They're all on the Professor Messer website. And it also helps support the website when you go to professormesser.com/vouchers. For doing that, I think you should get something out of the deal. So if you do purchase the voucher on my website, you get a copy of my CompTIA Exam Hacks ebook for free along with it. This gives you some tips and life hacks that you can use before, during, and after the exam to do the best possible, the highest number, the most success you could possibly get. I try to put all the tips and tricks in there. So you'll find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was, a network administrator is configuring SSO. Which of these technologies would be the best choice for this task? Would it be TACACS Plus, Kerberos, Radius, local authentication, or LDAP? Let's see how you answered this one. And you can see that 32% of you say Kerberos, 28% said LDAP, 21% said Radius, 11% said TACACS Plus, 8% said local authentication. We're all over the place on this one. We're not quite sure where to go with this particular answer, where we're looking for SSO. SSO stands for single sign-on. That's right. Single sign-on is an important part of our enterprise networks. If we didn't have single sign-on, every time we needed to connect to a resource, we would have to provide authentication. So every time we go to a printer, we have to log into the printer. Every time we go to one share, we would have to log into that share. Every time we go to another share, we'd have to log into another share. Every time we go to another resource on the network, a plotter, a printer, a scanner, anything else, we would have to, at the very least, provide a username and password. In many cases, more than that. This is a big reason that many organizations will use single sign-on. So all you have to do is sign on the first time. And if you try to connect to any other resources, you'll be able to connect to those without having to authenticate over and over and over and over again. And Kerberos is a fantastic protocol to be able to do that. This is what Windows uses. If you've ever been in an enterprise, you're logging into your Active Directory domain, you put in a username and password one time at the beginning of the day, and that's the only time you ever have to put it in. You never have to put in your username and password again because Windows is using Kerberos. Kerberos is a fantastic single sign-on function, and that's why answer B, Kerberos, 34% of you answered that. That is the right answer. Now, there are other authentication protocols in this list. TACACS Plus, Radius, and LDAP can all be used to provide authentication. But there's no mechanism within TACACS, Radius, or LDAP to provide single sign-on. Single sign-on is an additional piece that overlays the top of the authentication. There's nothing built into LDAP that provides single sign-on. There's nothing built into Radius that provides single sign-on. There's nothing built into TACACS that does single sign-on. So that's why those would not be the right answers. And local authentication means that the database of that local machine, the database that's on that local device you're trying to authenticate to, is where it would pull its username and password. Again, no single sign-on functionality. So for this answer, 35% of you said Kerberos, and that is the correct answer. Well done with that. You made it through our first rewind question of the month. Well done. I have other questions for you, though. Here's a lot that we could go through to figure out ways to do things. But if you've ever gone to the Network Plus exam, the first handful of questions you get on the exam, not multiple choice questions. So if you walk in and you're ready to take this exam and you think you're going to answer A, B, C, D, or E, this does not really do that. So we have to think about, for this particular exam, what other types of questions might be asked. There might be fill in the blank. There might be putting you in a command prompt and having you perform a function. There might be matching questions or drag and drop or putting things in a particular order. So the first new question of every study group, I like to do a performance-based question. Let's do this performance-based question. This one is one where I'm putting you into the command line, and I want you to determine the TTL for www.professormesser.com. That's what I want you to be able to do. From the command line, determine the TTL for www.professormesser.com. I'm not going to give you any more information other than that. Is from the command line. That's what I want you to be able to do. So there's a few things you have to know about this, of course. First, you have to be able to work at the command line, and you also have to know what a TTL is, whatever that is, and whatever it means. So there are a number of different ways to do this. I will show you one of them here. You will know if you do it correctly because you will see this on your screen. If you pop open a command line right now on your computer, you may or may not be able to do this. Depending on what utilities are available and what command line options you think might be there. I'm really looking for one particular command with really no extra flags or extra options added to it. Really, the base functionality of this particular command is the one we're looking for. So let's see if you know what it is. As always, please do not answer in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We want to answer by following that link at the bottom, professormesser.com/QA. And I need to look and see. There we go. Now you're able to put the answer in if I click the right button on my side. See how that works? So see if you can put in what you think the answer is. A number of you are going through and figuring out this piece of it. From the command line, determine the TTL for www.professormesser.com. Obviously, I'm looking for the TTL for a particular domain name. That might help you as you go through this. Not looking for your TTL, looking for mine, for specifically www.professormesser.com. So that should get you thinking about all of these different concepts of TTL, which of course are important as well. See if you happen to know it. This is a pretty good one. And I think one of the ways that, and some of you are getting into this, like, oh, there's a domain name there that we need to find the TTL for. Yes, there is. So I think a number of you are figuring out what those pieces might be. See if you happen to know the answer. From the command line, determine the TTL for www.professormesser.com. You may be able to figure those out. I think a number of you are even thinking about what that might be. If you are ever in a position to have to know what this happens to be, the TTL is pretty important. See if you know what it happens to be. If I was going to answer this one, I would probably focus on a number of different criteria. Let's see if you're able to find the right combination of things that would allow you to do that at the command line. I want this domain TTL is what I am looking for all of you that are working through this. We're going to try to see if you can work through the different pieces of that. Whenever I start going through these performance-based questions, you could be asked questions like this all the time. Questions that really deal with setting up and running through a command line function. So hopefully that will give you some ideas of what to what to go through. Let's see how we do with this. From the command line, determine the TTL for professormesser.com. So I'm going to bring up a command right here, and I want to be able to find for www.professormesser.com the time to live. A number of you in the responses said you would use ping. But what ping does, it provides me a TTL, but this is the TTL, the time to live, the TCP time to live, IP time to live, that we are communicating with between my device and across the network to some other device. That's not what we wanted. We wanted the time to live for a domain lookup, www.professormesser.com. One of the easiest ways to do this is to dig it. Can you dig it? I can dig it. professormesser.com. And if I dig www.professormesser.com, I get a number of different options. For example, this web server that I am accessing, which is quad 9.9.9.9, says that professormesser.com has a number of different IP addresses associated with it. But the time to live for this domain lookup, the time that it will sit in the domain cache that's local on my machine, is 300. 300 what? 300 seconds. So 5 minutes is the time that will sit on my machine, which means if I access that domain, let's say I go to a browser, I go to www.professormesser.com, I go to that particular site, I go to my website, the IP address resolution will sit in my local cache for 300 seconds. After 301 seconds, it times out. And if I was again to type that in to go to professormesser.com, it would have to perform another DNS resolution to be able to save that. So you're never going to have more than 5 seconds of domain resolution information when you go and you to anywhere at professormesser.com by design. That way, if I wanted to change the IP address of my website for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but the way that I would be able to make a change, I know that everyone would have that change active in their system in about 5 minutes. If you've ever looked at the time to live for other domains, you might see even longer or even shorter domain names or time to lives in there. Just depends on what that administrator wants you to be able to see. So if you wanted to find the TTL for a particular domain name, this is the way you do it. Dig is the easiest way to do it. You can, of course, use NSLookup. NSLookup is a great utility for querying web servers or querying DNS servers. The problem, though, is there is additional information you would have to add to the NSLookup command options to be able to see TTL. Because if you do an NSLookup for www.professormesser.com, you'll notice the only thing it gives you by default is that you went to quad 9, you talked and got these IP addresses, you resolved these IP addresses for that name. It doesn't tell you anything else, but there are different commands to be able to use for that. In fact, I think it's a type we would have to put in. Maybe we'd have to specify the A record and have it pull that information in. I don't remember what the command is, but it's so far out of scope for Network Plus, you don't have to know that. This is really looking for dig on the answer for this one. Dig is a fantastic utility. If you're running Windows, you'll notice Windows doesn't have dig installed. That's no good, but there is a way that you can install dig on your Windows system. I did a video, it's on my channel, how to install dig in Windows 10. So that you'd be able to do it. Type SOA. Yeah, you can see the first record of the type SOA. Thank you. It wasn't the A record. It's the SOA record. So dig is fantastic to use. There are some tricks for getting it to install properly in Windows 10. Watch my video. It's very short. How to install dig in Windows 10. It's on my channel. That's a great way to do it. And Lori is watching this. Lori, please add a link to that video in the video description of this study group, and that will get you there. That dig utility is extremely useful. Make sure you're familiar with both the dig and NSLookup utilities. It's really going to help you as you go through and understand more about what to use for doing name resolution. Let's do another question. That was our performance-based question of the month. Let's shift gears now and do a multiple choice-based question. This question asks, an attacker has created a DOS by sending STP frames from their workstation. Which of the following would prevent this from occurring? Would it be BPDU guard, DHCP snooping, a router, flood guard, or a SIM? An attacker has created a DOS by sending STP frames from their workstation. Which of the following would prevent this from occurring? Would it be BPDU guard, DHCP snooping, router, flood guard, or SIM? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. From the chat room, some folks asking, will I be doing any study groups for CISA Plus? No plans at the moment. So sorry. So sorry. Not going to happen at the moment. Maybe if I ever do a CISA Plus course, that would be the time to look for those. Also in the chat room, I was under the impression that DIG and NS lookup have been limited for security concerns. No. Now, everybody has to be able to do a name resolution. If you got rid of the ability for anyone to perform a name resolution, you would break everyone's system. And that's why when things break, it's always DNS, as they say. But no, I don't think DIG or NS lookup are really that limited. There's so much information that's publicly available on a DNS server. DIG and NS lookup just allow you to access that information. It's not like you can't get to it. It's on a separate machine somewhere. That's the important part of this. Wouldn't think there's any security concerns with that either. That's publicly available information. Generally speaking, you want people to access the information that's on your DNS server. So that'd be a good way to do it. Let's see how you did with this question, which is, an attacker has created a DOS by sending STP frames from their workstation. Which of the following would prevent this from occurring? Would it be BPDU guard, DHCP snooping, router, flood guard, or SIM? You can say that 44% of you say flood guard, 39% of you said BPDU guard, and then single digits for everything else. 9% said SIM. Well, that was the wrong button. 9% said SIM, 10% now. And then 4% each for DHCP snooping and a router. So that is what you would find between these two, flood guard or BPDU guard. It has to be one of those to be able to make this work. We're specifically talking about STP frames in this question, the spanning tree protocol, which means the answer is probably going to deal with the bridge protocol data units or BPDUs. And to be able to prevent someone from sending fake BPDU frames, we would need some way to guard against that. And we would use BPDU guard. That is what we would do. These bridge protocol data units are really the foundation of spanning tree. Spanning tree protocol uses BPDU to be able to send information back and forth between bridges, i.e. switches, to be able to know exactly what all those switches are doing. The way that this works is you would normally plug into a switch with your workstation, and the administrator of that switch has told the switch, this is just a workstation. You don't have to do any type of STP listening. You don't have to worry about spanning tree because it's just a single device plugging in. There's no possibility for loops because it's the single machine. The problem is if that machine happens to send a BPDU, maybe it's some evildoer that is trying to send BPDU frames and cause a denial of service on your network, we want the switch to identify if someone's trying to do that and turn off that particular interface. And the function to do that in the Cisco world, you would configure that interface for port fast so that it will turn on and quickly start communicating on the network. And you want it to turn off if there's any BPDUs by configuring BPDU guard on that interface. So that's what we want to be able to do, is use BPDU guard to make that happen. 41% of you, now that I've shown that slide, have jumped onto the BPDU guard bandwagon. Indeed, answer A, BPDU guard, is the correct answer. Now, D, 41% of you said flood guard. Flood guards would be great if flooding was the issue. If we were sending so much traffic and so many broadcasts or other types of frames onto our network that we were flooding it with information, then a flood guard would be what we were looking for. But for spanning tree, we don't have to flood our network to be able to break things with spanning tree. We could send a couple of very well-crafted BPDU frames and we've broken things. So that's why BPDU guard is very, very important. Whenever we talk about a denial of service that has anything to do with spanning tree, you can automatically think that's somebody messing up the whole spanning tree system with BPDU guard, with BPDU frames. And the BPDU guard will help you quite a bit. So that's why I always tell people, focus on the protocol at hand and the type of attack and understand what's happening on the network so that we can now stop what's happening on the network. If you answered A, BPDU guard, you got that one absolutely right. It would not be DHCP snooping. DHCP snooping is a function that allows us to find rogue DHCP servers or DHCP servers that were incorrectly enabled. If someone's trying to make themselves a DHCP server, DHCP snooping will turn that off right away. Routing won't help you very much because this denial of service with spanning tree is all happening on the local subnet. Adding a router doesn't change that. You're still breaking things with spanning tree on your local subnet, so that's not going to help you either. And a SIM, security information, the idea behind compiling log files is fascinating. I think you could take your entire career and work with log files and SIMs. But security information and event management is a very useful set of skills to have, especially if you're on the security side. It helps you also very much on the networking side as well. But it doesn't help at all to prevent BPDU frames, spanning tree, manipulation, or any type of denial of service. So it would not be answer E. The only one that makes sense here is answer A, BPDU guard. And 42% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. Oh, by the way, also the Abstract in the chat room, thank you for the $5 super chat donation. Abstract writes, thanks again for all your info, study material, and dedication. More than happy to help. I'm hoping that some of this will help you as you go through your security or your Network Plus studies. Might help you with Security Plus studies too. Who knows? Be able to figure it out. I've got more questions for you. I appreciate that donation, by the way, very, very much. Thank you so much. To be able to go to the next question, here's the next question that asks, a wireless network analyzer shows an SNR of 1 to 1. Which of the following should be the next troubleshooting step? Would it be enable WPA2, change the frequency, rename the SSID, disable 802.1x, or modify the passphrase? A wireless network analyzer shows an SNR of 1 to 1. Which of the following should be the next troubleshooting step? Is it enable WPA2, change the frequency, rename the SSID, disable 802.1x, or modify the passphrase? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Thank you so much. For those of you that have scheduled your exam for N10-007, keep scheduling and keep working towards that N10-007. You should just pretend N10-008 does not even exist. You've got plenty of time. You've got until June to pass your N10-007 exam. So keep studying your N10-007. So that's why I say to do that. Now, obviously, in the chat room, CA is even mentioning in his school, they're making you study and take the 008 next month, that's perfectly fine as long as you have study materials for the N10-008, and that's what you're studying from. There's just not a lot of those out right now. There's not a lot of N10-008 materials. Your school really was very aggressive at pushing the N10-008 for some reason. I don't know why people do that. But as long as you have a good set of books, a good set of videos, there are study materials out, just not a lot. And I would like you to be able to choose from many different options, not just from 4. So that's why I tell people you can take the N10-008, but you can choose between these 4 things to study with right now, which is not a very good way to study. The more you have available, the better your study experience is going to be. So that's why I tell people, take the N10-007 at least until a few months go by. And then you can have a look and see what's available on the market to be able to do that. I do have my N10-007 course notes and my N10-008 course notes. So that's an example of just one of the many materials that you might be able to choose from. Let's see how you did with this question. A wireless network analyzer shows an SNR of 1 to 1. Which of the following would be the next troubleshooting step? Would that be to enable WPA2, change the frequency, rename the SSID, disable 802.1x, or modify the passphrase? 82% of you say change the frequency. That's a pretty strong answer because all of the other answers single digits. 7% said enable WPA2. 4% said rename the SSID. 3% said disable 802.1x. And 4% said modify the passphrase. Effectively, a 3-way tie. SNR is really the key here. That's really what we were looking for. SNR is signal to noise ratio. How much signal is in this wireless signal? How much noise is in this wireless signal? Obviously, we want a lot more signal than noise. In fact, we want almost no noise. We would like there to be no noise in this signal if at all possible. That, of course, is not always possible. Very rarely are you going to have no noise in a signal. There's going to be a little bit from something. From some type of electronic equipment is going to create some interference. You're going to be too far away from the antenna to be able to hear everything, so there's going to be some noise. You want as much signal as possible and as little noise as possible, which means that you would like a ratio between those things to be very big. You would like there to be a very large difference, a large signal number, a very small noise number, a 10 to 1, 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1. You want a lot of signal and very little noise. If you had exactly the same amount of signal as noise, it'd be 1 to 1, which is not good at all. You do not want that. Super bad. So here, for example, is a really great chart showing signal to noise ratio on some networks that are near me. Anything that is green is the signal. Anything that is red for this dotted line is the noise. Here's the mark that's up here. And you can see for the most part, we have a very good signal to noise ratio. We have a lot more signal on this particular network than this very little bit of noise at the bottom. That's what we would like, is to be able to have that level of signal to noise ratio. And in fact, that is the right answer. If you are having a problem and you're getting as much noise as signal, there's probably some type of interference on your current frequency. If we change the channel, we modify the frequency inside the access point, we can see if we can minimize noise and increase the amount of available signal. And that of these 5 options is the only thing that would be qualified as the next troubleshooting step for this. Enabling WPA2 would only be able to provide additional security. And our problem is not security. Our problem is SNR. And you have to know what SNR is, the signal to noise ratio. WPA2 either being enabled or disabled will not modify SNR. So that's not going to help us. Renaming the SSID of the wireless access point, well, you should never have to do that. So that's not going to be the right answer, and it doesn't change anything with the signal or the noise by changing the name of the access points. That doesn't help us. Disabling 802.1x. 802.1x is a very useful authentication protocol. We almost use this constantly on our enterprise networks, especially for wireless. Disabling that would also not be something that would affect either the signal or the noise. So modifying anything relating to network access control or 802.1x is not going to help you at all. And then modifying the passphrase. Well, if you're using 802.1x, there is no single passphrase. But if you are using a single passphrase, a shared passphrase on this particular access point, modifying the passphrase might change the security posture, but it doesn't change the signal and it doesn't change the noise. So that's not going to help you either. The only thing in this list that would help you with an SNR of 1 to 1 is to change the channel and the frequency. Answer B, 82% of you got that one right. Well done. As you can see, for the N10-007 and the N10-008, there is a lot of information that you have to know. And I have created for my Network Plus course that is 101 videos, 12 hours of content for my N10-007. My N10-008 course is a little more concise. I think it's going to be about 90 videos. I wanted to get just under under the 100 mark. So about 90 videos, still about 12 hours of content, I think, once this is all over. But I want some way that you will have access to everything that is in my videos. And you can do that through my course notes. I have both printed versions of these course notes. In fact, one for N10-007 and one for the brand new N10-008. The reason I think the N10-008 is going to be a little bit longer is that the N10-007, I think, what's the number of pages here is 66 pages. This is 76 pages in the newer one. So 10 more pages of content. Another good reason to take your 007. So whether you need the 007 course notes or the 008 course notes, you can find those at the Professor Messer website. Just follow the link at the top of your page for whichever one you're trying to get your hands on, and they will be there. I've also got additional things that might help on my website. In fact, when we go to the after show, if you want to see the new N10-008 CompTIA Cert Master, I've got both the Cert Master practice for practice questions, and I've got their new labs. Brand new Cert Master labs I want to show you for the N10-008, which are pretty slick. If you buy the labs on my site, you get the course notes for free. So another way to do it. And you have the choice to purchase either digital PDF versions or physical versions of the books. Either way, and I do ship internationally, so whichever works well for you. Find that at professormesser.com. Follow the links at the top of the page, and you can find those course notes. Let's do another question. This question, an IP subnetting question, so to speak, weirdly printed on my screen, but we'll make it through. The question asks, which network class is associated with 128.14.222.7? Is it a Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, or Class E? Kind of weird that we got some separation here, but we'll do the best we can. Which network class is associated with 128.14.222.7? Is it Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, or Class E? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer, put it in right there. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. I will say, for those of you that are studying the Network Plus and the comments that I'm seeing in the chat room right now, there's a lot of content in the Network Plus. People come off the A Plus and think, wow, that was a lot I had to study. I had to memorize a lot of things in A Plus. And then they get to Network Plus and realize, whoa, there's a lot more I need to memorize. All of these wiring diagrams, all of these charts on IP addresses, understanding the details of DHCP and the different records in a DNS server, understanding the security side and the troubleshooting pieces and the cabling, and just a lot you have to memorize. So you're right. There is a lot you have to memorize, but that's sort of the nature of networking. Many times people will say, well, I've got Google. Why do I need to memorize anything? Well, I'll extend that further. Why do you bother memorizing anything at all? It's all on Google. Do you drive a car? Why do you bother memorizing how to drive a car? Just Google it before you hop in the car. If you're in a meeting with a lot of people and network professionals and you're trying to set up a new network, you got a new project and you're part of the networking team, they're going to say, well, we need to extend this about 200 meters. How are we going to do that? And they turn to you and say, how are you going to do that? They go, I don't know. Let me Google it. That's not going to work. You're going to need to know immediately. Well, let's see. We have a number of options. We could do it with copper. We could do it with fiber. Here's what we'd have to do. We'd have to put a repeater in, or we'd have to run the single fiber connection. That's what you should do, is know off the top of your head, because that's really, really going to help you. So that's why I tell people, don't rely on Google. You're going to be in meetings where you don't have the ability to jump into Google and try to figure out these things. It's such an odd response. Let's see how you did with this one, which you probably got the answer to this one through, I don't know, Google, which is, What network class is associated with 128.14.222.7? Is it Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, or Class E? And you can see that 70% of you have said Class B, 17% of you say Class A, 10% said Class C, only 3% said Class D, and 0%, which we don't often get, said Class E. Well, obviously, the best way to determine the default class of an IP address is, well, one of the fastest ways is to look at the first octet. And you can see in the first octet of this one is 128. Now we can go to our chart and we can see that anything that starts with a 128, in fact, between 128 and 191 qualifies as a Class B, which means the default subnet mask is going to be 255.255.0.0. Now, you could also convert that first number into binary, look at the first 4 bits of that particular address, and if the first 2 bits, by the way, are 10, then it's a Class B. And in fact, for a 128 address, that is the first 2 bits of that byte is 10. That's another way to do it. So if you forget the ranges, you may be able to reverse engineer them by doing a quick binary to decimal conversion in your head. So another great way to go through this process. I think that might help you too. I've got new videos on these subnet classes on the Professor Messer website for the N10-008. And for those of you that are struggling with subnetting in general, one of the more popular subnetting top methods is from Cisco. Their method is called the magic number method. It's very close to the style of my 7-second subnetting. But if you look at my new N10-008 course, I do have a new video I introduced for that course for magic number subnetting. And then, of course, I also have my video on 7-second subnetting. Find the one that works for you. Maybe it's a combination of the two that allows you to figure it out. But these subnet classes and knowing this chart will help you very much during that initial subnetting process. And that means those of you that answered Class B, 71% of you said Class B. That was the right answer. That is the right answer. That's what you want to do. It would not be Class A, Class C, Class D, or Class E because it did not fit into those leading bits. 1 to 127 is A, 192 to 223 is C, 224 to 239 is D, and then the reserved range, 240 to 254, which you should never see anywhere. Can't use them. They're reserved. They're not for you. So you should never see Class E. Any IP address that starts with 240 to 254 is an invalid IP address. That makes me think I should add that to some of my lists of invalid IPs. So Class B, if you answered B, 71% of you got that one absolutely right. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would be glad to give you a 1-hour webinar category CEU if you follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, I want you to put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put that this is September 2021 Network Plus Study Group. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, I want you to put the super secret code word of the month, 255.255.0.0. That is the super secret code word of the month. That is a very cryptic code word, but that's what it is. So again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email, in the subject line, put something that allows me to see that this is the September 2021 Network Plus Study Group. On a line by itself, please put the super secret code word 255.255.0.0. And then if you'd like to put anything else in that message and send it to me, I do read through every single one of them. It takes me about a week to turn these around. I just updated the ones today. So if you have sent me any requests for CEUs, you should have received all of them by this morning. Any new ones? Well, it might take a week. We'll have to see. I think I'll get them out faster than a week. I hope to get them out over the next number of days. So this would be something you should see, hopefully, by the end of this week. But I make no promises, everybody. That's just the way I work. So for this question, Class B was the right answer. 72% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. We got time. Let's do another question. This question asks, a network administrator has configured an 802.1q connection. What type of traffic would be most associated with this link? Would it be 802.11 wireless, internet traffic, dynamic routing protocols, an encrypted tunnel, or multiple VLANs? A network administrator has configured an 802.1q connection. What type of traffic would be most associated with this link? Would it be 802.11 wireless, internet traffic, dynamic routing protocols, an encrypted tunnel, or multiple VLANs? If you think you know the answer, use that link on your screen, professorbesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. In the chat room, I've read that Class E are used for experimental purposes. Well, they aren't really. They're really reserved. You are not supposed to use them for experiments either in your lab. They are reserved. They're not for research. They're not for experiment. They're reserved. And they've never been allocated for use to do anything with them. So they're not for experiments. They're not for research. They're not for anything. They're just not to be used, period. If you use those IP addresses, you're violating the RFCs. That's it. In fact, it'd be unusual. Well, I shouldn't say it'd be unusual to find a router that would route them. Maybe most routers do by default because they figure, well, if you use them, that's on you. You shouldn't. But maybe they'll change the RFCs or allocate that particular range of IP addresses to something else, and our code would have to be updated. So instead of updating our code, let's just route it. That's probably what I would do if I was routing this traffic, is doing it that way. I don't know. You run into these weird situations where certain routers will work in a certain way. If you have, for example, a router at home, one of those wireless routers, the ones you would put in a home that are made for the consumer market, I've tried routing traffic through a separate subnet onto that local routed network that's directly connected on that wireless access point router, wireless router thing. It won't route them. It will only route the traffic that's on its local subnet. And it will, even with a default route, it just won't route it. So you never know what you're going to find. So that's the key, is knowing what you can do with the equipment you have. And sometimes it's not necessarily full featured. Sometimes it's overly featured. You'll find all kinds of interesting things when you get into this particular business and what it will do. I'll tell a story about that in just a bit. Let's see how you did with this question, though, which asked, a network administrator has configured an 802.1q connection. What type of traffic would be most associated with this link? Would it be 802.1 wireless? Would it be internet traffic? Would it be dynamic routing protocols? Would it be an encrypted tunnel? Or would it be multiple VLANs? Let's see how you answered. 64% of you say it's multiple VLANs. 17% of you said that's an encrypted tunnel. And then single digits, 9% said dynamic routing protocols, 5% said internet traffic, 4% said 802.11 wireless. Well, this is, if you ever see .1q, which is 802.1q, whenever we talk about .1q, that's our shortcut for it, we're talking about trunking. .1q takes what is a traditional, normal Ethernet frame, and it shoves some extra data in there. It shoves a VLAN field into the frame. That header is used to determine when this frame gets to the other side, what VLAN is it a part of. That becomes very important if you start to do any type of trunking on your systems. Sometimes in very old Cisco equipment, Cisco hardware and Cisco documentation, you may see a reference to ISL, inter switch link. That was before we had 802.1q. Cisco created their own way of doing .1q effectively. But now that there's .1q and it's a standard, everybody uses .1q. Do not use ISL. That's just a bad idea for everybody. The way that this works is on separate physical switches, you could have multiple VLANs. Of course you could. You could have, for example, in this case, there's a VLAN 100 and a VLAN 200 on both of these switches. Well, how can you connect those switches together so that everybody stays on their own VLAN? The way that you do it is you could set up one link for VLAN 100, and then you could run another Ethernet cable for VLAN 200, and you're done. Well, I guess you could do that, and you might have enough interfaces to do that. What if each switch had 100 VLANs on it? How are we going to do that? Now we're going to run 100 cables between them? No, you're not. You're going to do a single cable, single connection between the two. And you're going to call those connections trunk connections. And you're going to say if anything goes into the trunk, figure out what VLAN it came from, stick a new VLAN header on it, send it across the other side, look at the VLAN header, go, oh, you need to go to 100, put them back on the correct VLAN on the other side. That's all .1Q does. That is it. I say all it does. It can be confusing, especially if there's a lot of VLANs and you're trying to figure out how to break each one of those things out. But these VLANs can be quite the challenge. Let's see if we can make this Ethernet frame from the VLAN 200 device. We'll get the extra piece added to it on the trunk. It gets sent across the trunk. The VLAN piece gets ripped off of it, and it gets put back onto its native VLAN 200, and off to the machine it's looking at. That is what you would use to be able to do trunking. If you want to extend this and have multiple VLANs communicating over a single link, you would need .1Q, and that would be answer E. 66% of you got that one right. Now, it would not be 802.11 wireless, at least not necessarily. 802.11 wireless is not generally associated with .1Q. In fact, you would not really commonly see trunked connections over a wireless link. You could, but that's not normally what you would see. But .1Q doesn't mean, of all the 5 options, that is not the one that would be most associated with that link. So we're going to throw out the wireless. Same thing for internet traffic. Just because it's 802.1Q doesn't mean that the traffic is internet related or not internet related. We don't know what's going over the link. So that's not what .1Q is used for. So we're going to throw out internet traffic as well. Dynamic routing protocols, important to have. If you're running BGP, you're running EIGRP, or one of these other OSPF, other dynamic routing protocols, extremely useful, but that's not what 802.1Q is used for. 802.1Q is used to have a single link that you could have multiple VLANs communicating on, and dynamic routing protocols is a completely different process used for a completely different need. So it would not be answer C either. And then D, encrypted tunnel, another important thing to have for our VPNs especially, but 802.1Q is not associated with encrypted tunnels, IPsec, or VPNs in general. So not what we would use. The answer that is most associated with a link that's configured for 802.1Q is answer E, multiple VLANs, and 65% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another one. Let's do this next question. Since we were talking about having an encrypted tunnel, let's do this question that asks, an organization has connected 2 sites over a secure encrypted tunnel. Which of the following would most likely be in use? Would it be SSH, RDP, IPsec, SFTP, SNMP? An organization has connected 2 sites over a secure encrypted tunnel. Which of the following would most likely be in use? Would it be SSH, RDP, IPsec, SFTP, SNMP? 5 options to choose from. Lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. See if you happen to know what that answer is. Be able to put it in there. And of course, as always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We've been doing a lot of this, obviously, lately, and having these things here. I think that whenever we start working through these challenges with questions and answers, we always run into scenarios where there may be some things we can pull from other questions. We can pull things from the existing questions. There's lots of things that we might be able to get some answers from. So you should absolutely do this on your exam. Take advantage of those additional cues they give you, whether those cues are in the existing question or perhaps even more commonly, they're a different question helps you answer another question on your exam, which is really, really useful. That's a very important tip to be able to do, because you'll find on your exam, you'll get to the very end, you realize, wait, a question that I just got asked answered something that was at the beginning of my exam. And fortunately, on CompTIA exams, you can jump around. So you can even jump back to that question, and then that reminded me what the correct answer is, and you can change your answer and have that there. Speaking of changing answers, let's see how you did with this one. This question asked, an organization has connected two sites over a secure encrypted tunnel. Which of the following would most likely be in use? Would that be SSH, RDP, IPsec, SFTP, or SNMP? And let's see how you answered with this one. 59% of you said IPsec. 36% of you said SSH. 3% said RDP. 2% said SFTP. And 1% said SNMP. This is where we have to now take this question, kind of break it down into individual pieces to really determine what's being asked. In this case, it was an organization connected two entire sites to each other and used an encrypted tunnel to do it. So everything you would send between those sites would be in this encrypted tunnel. One of the most common ways to do that is using Internet Protocol Security, or IPsec. IPsec is an incredibly common way to provide encryption and authentication for traffic between two sites so that no one would be able to capture that traffic, look at it, and try to determine what you were sending between those locations. It's a very standardized way to communicate. Almost every firewall, many routers, a lot of different devices. In fact, I have a consumer level device router, kind of a higher end consumer router that's in my home that supports IPsec. Also supports quite a bit of VPN, which I was surprised by, actually. There's two protocols that really you can focus on with this, which is the authentication header and the encapsulation security payload. In this question, it was two sites that were connected over an encrypted connection. And this is a good network diagram that shows that, where you would have kind of in the clear corporate traffic on one site going into a VPN appliance, another remote site also running in the clear. But when those two sites are sending information back and forth between each other, everything between those two sites is encrypted because we have an encrypted virtual private network, most commonly IPsec is what we would use to do that. And in fact, that is the right answer. Answer C, IPsec. 57% of you chose that one. That is the correct answer because that is really the most common way to tunnel encrypted traffic today. Now, SSH, for those of you familiar with Secure Shell, there are ways to set up secure shell tunnels between sites, and all of that traffic could be sent over SSH. However, that is very uncommon. It is not as secure as IPsec. And although 36% of you said you could do that, that wasn't the answer. That wasn't the right answer because it wasn't the right question that you were answering. The question was, which of the following would most likely be in use? And most likely connecting two sites over an encrypted tunnel is most likely going to be IPsec. There are some other options in here too. 3% of you chose the Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP. And if you've ever had someone take control of your desktop, they were using the RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, to be able to do that, most likely. 3% of you chose that. RDP is not a way that you would connect two sites over an encrypted tunnel, so that's not our right answer. SFTP is a secure protocol for file transfer. Secure File Transfer Protocol, SFTP. So SFTP, great for sending files between a client and a server and sending it in a secure way, but not a very good way to connect two sites over a secure encrypted tunnel. And then you have SNMP. SNMP is the Simple Network Management Protocol used to gather statistics from routers, switches, servers, other network devices. Great for network management, not very useful if you need to connect two sites over a secure encrypted tunnel. It would not be SNMP. And as people are mentioning in the chat room, IPsec, I guess you would use tunnel mode to have these two sites connected over a secure encrypted tunnel. Indeed, for those of you familiar with IPsec, there's a tunnel mode and transport mode. Interestingly enough, you'll never run into transport mode being used in the wild. Transport mode is a reasonable function. It's something that there are corner cases where that could be used, but you will find nobody's using it, because if you're setting up IPsec between two devices, you're probably setting it up so that you can encrypt the data. So it's almost always going to encrypt also a tunnel mode so that you can hide the IP addresses, the original IP addresses that were part of that communication. So this is a good example of where, yes, there is a transport mode and a tunnel mode, but you'll never see transport mode being used. It would be a very rare occasion to see transport mode being used. Almost always, you're going to be using tunnel mode to be able to make that happen. I think that's really the best way to approach this. It's the best between all these options here. It's the only one that makes any sense. And if you're going to be a network administrator, someone setting up network connections in your network, then being able to use IPsec and connect these two sites together will be the most common way to do this. There's just no question. That's what we would always use. In fact, if you're in a company and they say, well, we need to connect these sites together, oh, you need an IPsec tunnel. It's just the default. That's what we would do, is use this IPsec tunnel. So that would be the answer that we were looking for here. All these questions we went through today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you get a copy of these objectives. They tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. Make sure you study from the objectives that match the version of the exam that you're going to take. I recommend right now you take the N10-007. That means that the exam objectives you need will be for the N10-007. Do not study from the N10-008 and go walk in to take the 007. Do not study from the 007 and go in and take the 008. It'll be a bad time. Don't do that. Don't do it. Not a good idea. Just not something you should do. Make sure all your study materials match the version of the exam that you're going to take. Your books, your videos, your exam objectives, and everything else. Right now, take the 007 is what you want to do. Don't do 008 right now. There's not enough materials out on the market. By next month, we'll reevaluate. I have a feeling by the time we get to October, November, you'll start to see a lot more available. But as we sit here today, there's not a lot of options available for study materials. And I want you to have the most number of study materials available so you have the best possible chance of passing this exam. And the answer for that would be the N10-007. So that's where my logic thought process goes with this. We do one of these study groups every month for Network Plus. The next study group is currently scheduled for October the 20th. Which would be a great time to do it. Now, will it stay at October the 20th? Maybe. But if you are someone who was watching last month, you know that we're not having our Network Plus study group now when I told you it would be. These dates sometimes will change. So make sure you always check back with the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar to find out when the next live event will be. And in fact, this week, this is a Tuesday. If you want to come back in 2 days on Thursday, we're doing a Security Plus study group this week. It's a twofer. We're doing both of those this week, which I think is great. So make sure you check in. That's, of course, is always updated in the calendar. Don't forget my Network Plus Success Bundle and my Network Plus course notes, all available on my site at professormesser.com/netsuccess. There's, of course, the vouchers that are already discounted and ready for you on my website. Those come, of course, with my free exam hacks ebook as a bonus with those. And don't forget to follow us. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You type in professormesser.com/Twitter/Instagram/YouTube. And if you liked this study group today, it would be great if you gave this video a thumbs up. That would be much appreciated as well. I know that my friends at YouTube will look at that and go, well, somebody must have liked it. They hit that thumbs up button, and we really do appreciate that. We've got an after show coming up. We're not done. We're not even close to being done. I'm going to open up the phone lines. We'll take questions from the chat room in just a moment in the after show. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Let me click a few buttons on my side. Let me see if I can. Nope, we don't need that there anymore. Get that on the screen, and let's change out some of these graphics. Let's change out some of the other information I have. Let's get called into our show so that I have to call into my own show. Don't know if you knew that. It's on the cloud. So I call into my cloud-based setup. I have to find my browser. I have to click host show. I have to click start show. There's a lot of clicking going on here. And then I have to click in my Skype to call my own show. And this will call and beep and make a noise here in just a moment.
Thank you for...
Well, you're welcome. And then I'll type in a few numbers and a pound sign, and the nice lady says,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
I will do that. I'll type that in, and if I type it in properly, how about that?
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. That means that you can call in as well. There's your call-in number. It's in the continental U.S., a toll-free number that you'll find at 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. And that'll get you onto the call-in lines. You could also put some questions in the chat if you're watching this live on YouTube or live in the on my Professor Messer website. It's the same chat, so you'll find questions there as well. So be able to make that available to you. If you're calling from outside of the continental U.S., you can call in. All you have to do is use Skype because that's free. And you have a +1 at the beginning. +1 is what you want to do for the country code of U.S. +1 855-785-7545, that number that's on the screen. And you can, of course, make that work. That's all available to you over that link. I think whenever I start looking at call-ins and finding questions that are available, the chat room is a quick way to do it, but you're more than welcome to call in as well. So you may see, this is not entirely uncommon to see in different books that take the Class E, because I mentioned earlier, a Class E IP address is reserved. Just can't use it. It's not available. It's not experimental. It's not research. Nobody uses it. You can't use it. I guess research and experimental is some way for you to designate that it's not usable, I guess it's a roundabout way of saying that. The reality is, though, you really can't use it for research or experiments either because it's reserved. You cannot use it. So some books will tell you otherwise. Those books are not correct because you have to be able to absolutely know what IP addresses you can use and which ones you cannot. It's the same problem you run into when you talk about Category 5. Every book has a different answer on whether Category 5 can be used for 1000 base T connections. Well, it doesn't matter what the books say. The RFC and the standard says that it can. And you should be able to absolutely use Category 5 for 1000 base T gigabit connections because that's what the standard says. Every book is different. And every book, it seems, is almost wrong from that perspective. But once it gets printed in one book, it somehow gets duplicated in our industry with nobody doing any type of checks. And then suddenly half the materials out there have the wrong information in them. It happens more often than not, which is why I always tell you, if you're wondering if something I'm telling you is right, don't listen to me. Be a skeptic. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to your books. Go to the standard. Who determines what the right answer is? The standards body that created that standard. So either go to the RFC if it's something associated with a request for comments, or go to the 802.3 standard if it's something that's specific to Ethernet. That is the ultimate guide. That is the ultimate arbiter. That is the people that determine what the answer is. Doesn't matter what I say. Doesn't matter what the books say. That's the one that tells you what the right answer is. So I always tell people, don't worry about the books. The books get it wrong all the time. I've said wrong things certainly in my career. So who knows if I said it right? The only way you're going to know if you check the standard. And then if I got it wrong, you can tell me, well, you got this one wrong. Oh, well, let me update that. You're absolutely right. I got it wrong. That does happen over time. So just have to make sure you know what it is and be able to work through that. Let's go to the phone lines and get some questions in. We'll start with the 872 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm Z. I'm calling from Chicago.
Thanks for calling.
First, I want to say you're amazing. I've been a huge fan for a few months now.
No, you are.
But I plan on getting my Network Plus and my A Plus. But once I get those, where would you recommend going for resources to get started in the industry?
This is a question that I am not at all qualified to answer. This is one of those few questions where I don't have an answer for you because I have no idea what the employers in your area are looking for. Now, I have some broad recommendations that may or may not be applicable to your particular geography, but the right answer for that particular question is to see what employers are asking for. And I noticed that many people will jump into the industry and say, well, I looked at A+, I looked at Network Plus, I looked at Security Plus. I really like the idea of security, so I'm going to take the Security Plus first. And my question back to them is, for an entry-level position in IT, what are entry-level jobs asking for? And if in your particular geography, let's take, for example, the D.C. area of the United States, and that D.C., Maryland, Virginia area around the capital, that is pretty much an entry-level certification for the federal government entities. So I would go along with that. It makes perfect sense. If you go to Chicago, L.A., Texas, and you look at the jobs there, you may find that none of them are looking for Security Plus. So whenever somebody comes to me and says, I've got A+, I've got Network Plus, or I'm looking to know what should I go get a certification in right now? What certification should I get? I don't know, because I don't know what your personal goals and objectives are. Most of us are looking for a job or a better job. Therefore, I need to find out what the employers in that job or that better job would like me to have. If you look at different jobs that are available in your area and you notice the A+ comes up in every single one of them, well, that's the one you need to have. And you really don't need to go any further than that. If you notice, though, that they all are asking for Security Plus, maybe all of them are asking for the Google certification. Maybe all of them want a particular Microsoft cert or a VMware or an AWS certification. I don't know. It depends on what the employers in your area would like to see. That's what you should do, is a little more recon. So make yourself a spreadsheet, list out all of these different jobs. Go to your favorite job site, LinkedIn Jobs, Dice.com, Link Recruiter, whatever site you would like to go to be able to figure that out and find out what the employers hiring in your area are looking for. I could give you recommendations, but those recommendations could be completely wrong. The reality is there's probably a handful of certifications the industry sort of relies on, maybe 5 to 10 certifications, and you'll start to see them pop up in different places. But I would never tell somebody. The internet will tell you, well, just go get your CCNA. That's what you need, is a CCNA. All you need is CCNA. I don't care what other people ask for. You need the CCNA. They're just sort of pushing this certification down your throat. No, that's the one you need. But the reality is we don't know if anybody's asking for that certification. And you may find that A+ is what you need in your area. Network Plus is a bonus. Maybe nobody's looking for Security Plus. You kind of have to go and find out what people want. I think that's the best approach. I can give you very broad recommendations, but I think you've kind of heard them in this answer, and maybe you can find some job postings in your area that are a little more specific.
Yeah, I'll definitely go and do that. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. Whenever we start getting into that scenario of looking for a job, trying to find that entry-level position in IT, that tends to be with these certifications, the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, that tends to be what we're trying to do. So I think that it would not be a good recommendation from me without knowing anything else about what you were trying to accomplish in your career or where you happen to be in your area and what employers may be looking for. So I have to put that back on you. I have to turn that mirror around and say, this is for you. And being able to make that happen. In fact, in the chat room, the people even asking, would you recommend getting a CCNA after the Network Plus? Is CCNA an entry-level certification? CCNA is not an entry-level certification in any way. CCNA is probably a second-level cert. So it's a good one to take after the Network Plus if it is one that helps you accomplish your career goals. Certainly. CCNA by itself does not guarantee you anything. And it's very uncommon to find CCNA listed in an entry-level IT certification job because CCNA tends to ask and teach you skills that are not entry-level skills. So it's unusual to see that. Sometimes you will find it. You'll find somebody asking for it in an entry-level job. It's very unusual. Usually those are jobs where there's something very specific that's network related. Maybe you're working in a NOC, a network operations center, so they want you to be a little more network savvy than a usual generic help desk person. So that may be the case. But they're I would not say they're related. They build on each other. So if you have Network Plus, there's a number of topics from CCNA that you can effectively jump over. But the CCNA goes deep into switch configurations, router configurations, dynamic routing, spanning tree, understanding recovery and troubleshooting of those network connections. And in fact, CCNA doesn't cover a lot of things that are covered in your Network Plus. So this is one that I don't think a lot of people realize. They really do build on each other. And it's a good path to take Network Plus first and then jump into CCNA, especially if networking is very new to you. Let's go back to the phone lines. We'll go to the 801 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Ian, and I'm calling from Utah.
Hey, Ian from Utah. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
So, couple questions. So, I guess my first one is, I know you were mentioning earlier about, don't take the 008 Network Plus before taking 007, or don't study material for one or the other. And I guess my general question is when you take the test, does the test base itself along the lines of each of the exam objectives, the first 25% is really all that 1.0 questions, and then 1.2, or is it all very sporadically mixed up?
Oh, it's completely randomized. So the first question you get on your exam could come from domain 5. The second question could come from domain 2. The third one could come from domain 5 again. It's just completely random, scrambled up on your exam, but it will be specific to topics for that particular exam version. And as I mentioned, 40% of the topics on the N10-008, 40%, not 14, 40, less than 41, just above 39, is brand new on the N10-008. So if you walked into an N10-008 exam having studied for 007, then 40% of the exam will be brand new to you of things you did not study, which is a lot, and it's enough you could fail that exam pretty easily. But the topics on the exam and the structure of the exam, completely randomized. It comes from a large pool of questions. If you were to take the exam once and come back and take the exam again, you'll find it's another completely different group of scrambled questions. Maybe you'll find one in there that was duplicated just because laws of large numbers. But the exam will be completely different with a completely different structure and set of questions. They do all come from the objectives, but they are completely randomized.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. And then for my second question, so my end goal is to kind of get into the cybersecurity space, and upon research of just kind of other people's opinions, which obviously sometimes can be pretty invalidated, but a lot of people were saying that getting your Network Plus before your Security Plus is normally a good idea, just because in order to do security on these devices, you have to have an understanding of how they work. Now, that being said, I was curious, is there any other networking certifications that have to do similar to cybersecurity that might be worth getting aside from specific cybersecurity certifications that more networking?
What I find interesting, and as someone who has worked in the cybersecurity industry and moved there from someone who was working in a network-centric role, network management, network protocols, network visibility, moved into cybersecurity and IT security, specifically on the next generation firewall side, I found that a vast majority of what I was doing on that next generation firewall side was very network centric. In fact, in some cases, there was very little security layered on top of it. Most of what I was doing in some situations was very network specific, especially when you're dealing with planning, implementing, designing, putting in redundant firewalls, for example. There's a whole bunch of questions you have about what's happening at layer 2, what's happening at layer 3. Are there routing protocols? Is the firewall acting as a layer 3 device? Are you doing route redistribution? Is that connecting over an IPsec tunnel to another site? What are the routing tables going to look like to be able to accomplish that route? And then on top of that, yes, we can set up some security rules to make sure that the data flows properly. But a lot of what I just described was all networking questions. It was about integrating with existing redundant protocols. It was about getting the routing to work properly and the layer 3 piece of this. So that's what you will find if you move into IT security, is that you need to be someone who's very, very knowledgeable on the network side. I wouldn't say a network guru, but it sure helps if the more you know about networking. What I also found when I moved into IT security is a lot of the professionals I worked with at all of these companies I would visit were people that I used to work with on the networking side, and they moved up in their organization onto the security team, just as I moved into security on the back end, on the manufacturer side of things. So I found that to be very interesting, that a lot of the people I ran into, the vast majority of the people I ran into on the IT security side, are people that came from networking. And that's why I tell people, if you're planning to get into IT security and you're not in one of these geographies where there are entry-level security positions, there's not a lot of them to begin with, but you might have a security operations center in your area, a SOC, and there might be entry-level positions in that SOC that you might be able to find. But most of us don't have that luxury or even that option available. I always tell people, if you want to get into IT security and be successful with cybersecurity, become an expert in networking. And the rest of this, when you move on to the security side, will be a breeze, because now you've got the networking piece covered. You know exactly what layer 2 is doing. You know exactly what layer 3 is doing. You know how to design it. You know how to implement it. You know how to make it work. You know how to troubleshoot it. Now you can easily, relatively speaking, layer the security piece on top of that. So I think if you were wanting to get into security, it's not something you jump into as a first job. It's sometimes not the second job. Security is something that's a number of steps away for most people, but it's certainly plenty of positions available on the security side. All you have to do is put a plan together. Well, first, let me work here. Let me learn about operating systems. Let me move up into networking, learning the routing and switching, and then let me move into the security side, is a perfectly reasonable plan of attack.
Awesome. Cool. And then so aside from the Network Plus, then is there any other certification, kind of like you mentioned, the CCNA is like a level 2. Would you recommend any other certifications at that level 2 to kind of get you more into the networking space before that cybersecurity?
The CCNA is an excellent next step after Network Plus to be able to really learn the how-to part of networking. How do I set up a switch? How do I configure it? How do I set up a router? How do I configure it? How do I troubleshoot it? It's a fantastic hands-on certification. You learn a lot about protocols and a lot about troubleshooting with CCNA. On top of that, you can move into other Cisco-related certifications, especially those dealing with designing of networks, and to some degree, even those Cisco cybersecurity certifications are very well. I see a number of employers asking for those, and if the employers are asking for it, then by default, almost automatically, it becomes something that is worth a consideration. I think all of those make a very good pathway into IT security.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. Networking is always a challenge because there's so many different places to go with networking. But one of the things that you'll always see on the networking side is lots of an emphasis in Cisco, for better or for worse. There's a huge emphasis in Cisco. So I think that if you're wanting to do a lot more with security, then you need to do a lot more with networking, and that is just going to naturally take you through the Cisco ecosystem. Let's do another call from the 917 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor. My name is Ralph from New York City.
Hey, Ralph, thanks for calling.
No problem. I do have a couple of questions. The first one is I actually just passed my A-plus certification on Sunday.
Wow, congratulations. Fantastic.
Thank you. And I actually noticed that there is a ITF plus. Now, the question would be, do I really need to take that if I already passed the A-plus?
ITF, the IT Fundamentals. It's a certification from CompTIA. It's designed to be an entry level to the entry level. It's designed to be the one you would take before you took your A+. And I think a number of organizations, a number of companies and universities I've seen that will start you with ITF. What I have not seen is the employers asking for an ITF. That to me is the ultimate determination of value, is can I put a dollar sign associated with that cert? If I take an ITF and I earn my ITF plus certification, what does that mean to me for my career? And for the vast majority, for the most part, it means nothing for your career. Now, is it if you get into A plus studies, and A plus you're finding is a lot of things that you weren't prepared for and a lot of terms that you're not following, maybe then you step back and you take the ITF plus. Maybe that would be a good idea. But I think most people can push through. I think most people should start with A plus and do all of the A plus studies and not have to deal with ITF plus. But there may be situations where either an organization or maybe out there is an employer that is asking for ITF plus. Those are the only two times I could ever see somebody going after that cert. And if you've already got your A plus, there's really no real need to get an ITF plus unless an employer is specifically asking you to go get that cert.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, because I've been job hunting for the last 2 weeks and I haven't found anybody who's been asking for the ITF.
I think that's pretty much what I've seen as well.
Yeah. My other question is, do you have any other thoughts, or do you have any thoughts about doing Linux Plus videos?
It comes up from time to time. I've got a big list here. Now, for those of you that have been following on the study groups that I've done, we know that Security Plus finished up last year, beginning of this year. Network Plus is currently in production. That is being updated for its 3-year run. And right after that, the beginning of the year is going to be A Plus will be updated, both the Core 1 and Core 2 for its next 3-year run. But after that, after I finish those 3 that are in the queue, well, now there's like 2 years where nothing on A Plus, Network Plus, or Security Plus needs to be updated, which is a great opening. It's a great opportunity for me. So now I got to figure out, what do I want to do during that 2 years? I want to do another course, and I want it to be something. Linux Plus is a very common request, and it would be a fun one to do. If you're going to ProfessorMesser.com, for example, you are visiting multiple Linux devices that are running and operating, and I'm managing that entire infrastructure with the help of my folks at Rackspace that can do the harder, heavier lifting. But most of the day-to-day management of that servers or set of servers is mine. So I love Linux. I love working with it. It would be fun to do. We've already mentioned CCNA. So the Cisco certifications are something I'm very familiar with. Those would be fun to do. But then I also look at other things like cloud-based certifications, like Amazon and Azure, or maybe even other Microsoft-related certifications. It would be fun to do some like that as well. So I know that Red Hat, AWS, there's lots of options. I don't know what it's going to be. So I have my list. Every day I'm rearranging in the list what I think the most interesting and most needed sort of certification courses might be. I just don't have an answer to that. You're going to have to check back with me after I finish Core 2. When I'm finally starting whatever that next one is going to be, then I can finally tell you. So I just have no idea what that would be for the moment.
Okay, that's fine. I do have to thank you for everything that you've done. So, yeah, that's really it for now.
Well, thanks for watching, Ralph. I appreciate it. Thanks for the call as well.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too. That's always the challenge I have. And in fact, chat room, that helps me a lot, by the way, when you tell me, I would love it if you did this. That's fantastic feedback. I love getting those types of recommendations. The chat room is saying, I love Linux. I love cloud. I'd love a cloud course. Please do this. CCNA, Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure. So you guys have the same list that I have in my head. Really, it's not in my head. I have a physical list. But you have the same thought process that I have, is now that I have the time, what would be the best use of that time for you? What would be the best use of that time for me? And I could do a poll. The problem, though, is that the people I would be polling are the ones that are working on A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, which does provide me with valuable information, but it's very focused on that level and type of next steps for those people. I want to create a course that has a broad appeal regardless of what you are taking. Maybe it would have the same appeal as somebody who's taking A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. But CCNA would be fun. Linux would be fun. Cloud would be fun. There's just so many places you can go with this. We'll have to see. Because I have in my idea, I know what I would like it today. I could tell you what I would like it to be. Next week, it's going to be something different because I just keep changing my mind. SQL courses. You don't want me to do a SQL course. I can barely maintain my SQL server. That's not true. I do a pretty good job with SQL. But we talk about being in a meeting and needing to Google. All right, I'm the guy who would need to Google the SQL stuff. So once I see it, I understand what it is saying and I can implement it. But you don't want me to be that guy in that meeting because I'm just not that strong on the SQL side. Nothing like doing a course, though, to make you stronger on the technical side. Maybe that's where we focus on that. Back to phone lines. Let's go to the +27, I think it is. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor. I'm Maurice. I'm calling from South Africa.
Hi, Maurice. Thanks for calling.
Cape Town. I just quickly want to know, where can I get N+ exam, prep exam? Because I've been looking everywhere and I can't find anything that actually works. I've seen something from what's that guy? He also wrote the book, but his stuff doesn't work for me. I'm struggling to get stuff that actually works for me. And your A+ stuff works very well, but now I just can't get anything.
It is a challenge. It's hard to find good practice exams for any exam system. It's very, very difficult, especially if you're trying to find it for either kind of the N10-007, now especially the N10-008. The one that I have found most recently for the N10-008 are the ones that come from CompTIA. CompTIA, when they released their exam, they had a book, they had their learn, their practice, and their labs available right out of the gate. They're one of the few places you can go right now for N10-008 materials. And if you wanted to, in fact, I have here, for example, is the Network Plus practice for the N10-008, where they have practice questions for all 5 domains. So you can really break down in order. So you can go to 1.1, compare and contrast the OSI model layers and encapsulation. And you can go to questions that are all OSI questions and just go through the entire set of OSI questions. And then they've also got at the very end of this, once you go through all 5 of the domains and each module in the domain, they have a practice test that you can take. And the practice test has an hour and a half, just like the actual exam, that you could take this exam, take and go through the entire exam for all of this. Now, this is something that costs a little bit more than what most people will find with practice exams. But on my side, if you were to purchase the Cert Master Practice for the N10-008, it's at least at a discount. So I do discount over what CompTIA sells it for on their site. But it's hard to find well-written practice exams. It's sort of the nature of the business. I did not create a set of practice exams for the N10-007. Just the production of when all of that happened did not allow me the time to do so. My goal is, and I hope I have time, to create an N10-008 practice exams book as well. So we'll see if that happens. But in the meantime, maybe looking at what's available from CompTIA. There's also some options available on YouTube and on Amazon for other books that are set up for the N10-007. Nothing yet for the N10-008, however. There's just, I've kind of been in the same boat as you. I've looked around as well. Just not a lot out there, Maurice.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything. I'm thankful for you helping me with my A+. And yeah, because the thing is, I'm struggling with the phrasing of the words. Because I'm from South Africa, I don't really understand most of the way you guys talk. So it's difficult to actually put together the sentence and understand it the way you guys understand it. So it's a little bit more difficult because there's that American slang in there.
Eventually, us in the United States will learn how to speak English, but that hasn't quite happened yet.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maurice. I appreciate the call. Maurice isn't wrong. Sometimes you read through some of these questions. If you speak American English, it is a reading comprehension process. They've gotten a lot better with exam questions on the latest versions of exams, but I've noticed if you look at some of the older exam question types or materials that are for an older exam, that they aren't very well written. It's like they took a perfectly valid question, they stuck it through Google Translate and translated it to something else, translated it to German, then they translated it from German back to American English, and that's what they stuck on the exam. These days, though, I find the exams are much better in the way they're written, but they still do have kind of an American slant to them. So there are nuances in how we spell and how we structure the sentences that are a bit different. And that's why I wanted to make a Network Plus practice exams book, because I write my practice exam questions to emulate the same style and the same context, syntax, the same voice as an actual exam question. Even though I write them all from scratch, I want them to have the same feel as an actual exam. So hopefully I'll have a chance to do that with the Network Plus book. That'll be next on our list to have all of that there. One of the things I also found as I was going through and looking at questions, it's hard to find very good Network Plus questions. It's a little bit easier, slightly easier to find A+ and Security Plus, but for a number of different reasons on the internet, very, very difficult to find very good Network Plus questions. There's an opening. There's a gap that I'm hoping to fill, but it's just not written yet. It's all about physics at this point. I'm spending every moment of every day editing Network Plus videos, and they're being posted online. And when I'm not editing the video, I'm shooting the video so that I can then edit it and post it online. That process is going very, very well. And I expect that the entire course will be done shortly. But at that point, I'll be able to write a Q&A book. Hopefully that'll work out timing-wise. I make no promises, but that's my goal. One never knows when you talk about setting goals, whether it's something that's going to work properly. So in the chat room, we're all trying to figure out what would be the best course. Would it be the Google IT certificate? I see a number of employers starting to ask for that one, especially Google, of course. And the Google IT certificate has some good things in it. Some of it's A+, some of it's Linux-ish, some of it is more Google-ish, something specific to Google, since they really made that certification for their people. They just made it very broad that you could take it even if you're not working at Google. It's very good. I don't necessarily agree with the chat room context of networking being dead and everything going cloud, because as you can see, that didn't happen. There's plenty of networking around, tons of technology that is not. In fact, if you look at cloud-based infrastructure, what do you think the cloud runs on? Runs on big old switches, runs on some big old routers. There's tons of networking there to work through. Do not worry. In fact, even if you're working with virtualized routers and switches, you have to have a very good knowledge of networking. And I'm sorry you disagree with that. That's actually what it looks like in the cloud right now. The interesting part that I found, though, is that as we're moving things into cloud, we are changing the way that we lay out the network. It has changed the way we design networks because you can do so much more on the cloud side with putting virtualized networking components in there. And in some cases, the networking built into the hypervisor itself. Very, very interesting what we are doing at layer 3 in the cloud when we have no physical limitations. Very remarkable, but certainly an extreme knowledge of networking, perhaps even more knowledge of networking is required when you get into cloud-based technologies. So that's one of those places where, it's one of those scenarios where people said, oh, look, it's an iPad. You'll never use a laptop again. What was that, 10 years ago? So we've sold more laptops than ever. It's one of those scenarios. It's the cloud. You'll never need a computer again. It's the cloud. You won't have to know networking. It's the cloud. No, we have to know it even more than normal because it is the cloud. That's the focus. And I think if you were somebody who is getting into cloud technologies, and why wouldn't you? They are hot right now. You'll find that there's tons of networking that you're going to have to do. So I just, for example, had one of my sons just graduated from college with a cloud technology degree. And we were talking about some of the classes he was taking, some of the things he was doing. And he was talking about bringing up the different containers and working through them and using Wireshark to troubleshoot and being able to see things at a packet level. And I thought, this is exactly what we did in the physical world. This is exactly the same process we had in the physical world. We've just now put it all into the cloud. And we've changed, obviously, the technologies we use, but the underlying structure is exactly the same. So that's why I'm saying that when I mention networking in the cloud does not get rid of the need to network, that's where I'm coming from with those pieces. So critical. And especially, again, if you want to layer on the security part of it, the security aspect requires that you have an expert level knowledge on the networking side. So incredibly important. And I'm sort of also bringing this to the point of someone who was doing a lot with automation, orchestration, APIs, and integration on the security side, which quite honestly was also mostly networking. Being able to integrate and build out an entire application instance and have all of the security technologies in the right place was almost as much networking as it was security. In some cases more, because you had to orchestrate the subnet that everything was on, how it was connected to the rest of the network, what security rules were being put between those particular links. And there's different ways to do it. There's routing. We could have it as a pass-through or a virtual wire. There's so many different ways to make that happen, but certainly a huge emphasis in networking. So this is one of those, I think, that that it's important to get a broad scope of the technologies to really understand what people are doing with those technologies and understand that none of them are going away. It's not even a question at this point. Networking's not going away. Operating systems aren't going away. Laptops aren't going away. They're being used differently than they were 10 years ago. But as it turns out, they are just as important as they've always been to be able to make that happen. So that's really the challenge. I think if you ever get to a point where you are working through trying to decide what to do, don't listen to what I have to say. Don't listen to what other people have to say. We can give you suggestions and recommendations. We can tell you what we have seen in the world of networking and the world of security. But ultimately, go to the employers. Go talk to the employers about what they are wanting, because ultimately they're the ones that will give you the best determination of what they want. They're not going to hire somebody for a technology that's not there anymore. They're going to hire somebody for the technologies that they're using right now and the ones they're planning to use. So that's where I say go. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody in a chat room. Go to the employers themselves. They'll tell you. And you can see from there, were we right? Were we not right? These things change all the time. So that's your goal. That's your objective, is to do your studies, do your recon on the street to figure out the best way. And what I found is that anytime anyone tells me, oh, we're not going to do that anymore, or that's not a good way to go, every time somebody said no, I've always said, oh, wait, why are you saying no? Is something going on there that we haven't thought about yet? So always do your own research and figure it out. And I think that'll be the best way to go. I think that's whenever I was trying to break down where to go next in my career. That was my watchword. Whenever we talk about your IT journey or getting to the next step of where you want to be, I think that's really the best way to even think about it. I think a number of times you'll have that question in an interview, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Who knows? The entire industry could be different in 10 years. That's IT works that way. There's no way to know what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. If you want to be really laser focused on your career, think about where you want to be next. It will take care of itself. The 10 years will take care of itself. But what do you want to do next? Do you want to go into Linux? Do you want to learn more about Microsoft? Do you want to be an expert in networking? What do you want to do? So figure out the next step. Don't worry that people are going to say, oh, that's going away, or that's going to be different. Or, yeah, it is. It's IT. You're on a very moving ground right now. Nothing in IT stays the same. The things that I learned when I started in IT, some of those things are still here today. Many of those things are not. You're constantly having to re-educate and evolve yourself into whatever the industry is building itself into. So that's not ever going to change. You're going to be reading books and Googling and reading through RFCs for the rest of your career. But that's the fun part of it, is that it's never the same thing every day. And so that's why I think that, let's say the person saying that the network is gone. I don't know how we're going to connect each other, but he says the network is gone. There's no more network. It's all in the cloud. Okay, we will find the next thing to do, or we're doing it in the cloud. And that's fine too. We will figure it out. The industry is this constantly changing, constantly moving group of technologies and people and requirements and needs from the users, and we never really know exactly, but we know that it's going somewhere. So what you should do is focus on the big picture. Is networking going away? Of course not. So let's get a good knowledge in networking. Also in the chat room, we had someone mention, what about Python? Would that help me? And I think if you had to get to very marketable and powerful skills that will help you for the rest of your career, the automation using Python or PowerShell, ideally both, understanding how to make those dance will give you skills that, 80% of IT doesn't seem to have, and skills that will help you in your career because you will be able to get things done faster, but also help you regardless of where things go. Let's say the networking goes away forever. All right, well, I've still got skills in this Python and automation and PowerShell that I can use to do other things in Windows, in Linux, in Mac OS, and Android, iOS, all of these other operating systems. And I think that's where you should focus on the fundamentals. Will you be able to use these fundamentals for the rest of your career? Many of them you will. The knowledge that I have in networking, that I learned by looking at a sniffer connected to a token ring network. Can't find a token ring network anywhere. But the things that I learned looking at that screen, understanding the networking process, understanding protocols, understanding IP, TCP, UDP, ICMP, BPDUs, they're all there on the network. I was running token ring. Other people were running Ethernet, but it's the same protocols. The things I learned there, I've kept with me. We talked about them today. So, it was just a few years ago when I memorized those, but those things that I learned those many, many years ago are still things we're talking about today. So that's why I have at least some perspective when people talk about that's going away. This is going away. Well, it might, probably isn't, but it could. But if it does, we already have the foundation. We already have the fundamentals that we need to be able to pivot. Because in IT, you're constantly going to pivot. When I started working in IT, there was no internet. That's how aged I am. That's how old I am. As you look at me on the screen, I put a lot of Vaseline there on the lens so that I look young and spry. But I had to pivot. Imagine working in an environment today with the internet. How do you make that happen? You just pivot. You constantly are reading. You're constantly implementing and putting in these newer technologies. You're constantly learning how they operate. And whatever we're doing today will be very different in 10 years, in 20 years. But there's still going to be quite a number of technologies you're working with right now that are still going to guide you through. So nothing you're doing today is a waste of time. It's all going to give you knowledge that you will be able to build on for the rest of your career. And I kind of say that now that I'm on this side of my career, that I've already gone through the help desk and the field service technician and the overnight jobs and the 24 hours getting things running, kind of looking at it from this perspective back. I sure am glad I spent time learning those foundations because now I can still use them in everything that I do today. Very important. Never stop yourself from learning because somebody else said something's going away. All you're doing is setting them up for success and not yourself. Ultimately, it's about you and not about them. That's the beautiful part of IT, by the way, is that whatever option is available to you, whatever things you are working on, you've always got options. You always got things you can do. That if you're working in a particular area and you found something else that's shiny and interesting, you can pivot and go to work for the thing that's shiny and interesting. Otherwise, I would have never been able to work for a company doing next generation firewalls. I started working for Palo Alto Networks before their firewalls were being sold. The industry did not have a next generation firewall when I started working for them. I was by default the most knowledgeable systems engineer, except for the other folks in my group. The handful of SEs that we had, we were the most knowledgeable next generation firewall systems engineers in the world because we were the only ones with it. We had the latest technology. It was a rare situation where we were rolling out new technologies and we were the first ones to understand it. So I would love for you to be in that position. I would love for you to get into a position where you're right there on the cutting edge. It's very exciting. It's a little daunting. No one believes you. When we were rolling out these next generation firewalls, nobody believed these devices did what we say they did. It was great to be able to show people this new technology and say, here's a magic trick for you. Watch this and have it work that way. Tanika Thompson in the chat room with $20 super chat. Thank you so much for that very strong donation. We sure appreciate that. Didn't even put anything in there. No question, no comment, just here's 20. And we do appreciate that. It helps keep the lights on. And it's also very encouraging. We like to get more things done when we know that people are interested in what we are doing and making that happen. The interesting in the chat room about making these things happen and really working through that is that I often talk about the things you know, the practical experience you have, the formal experience or the formal education that you've gotten, the certifications you've earned. And in the chat room, they've even mentioned, what about the people you know? And I think through your career, that will be a valuable thing as well. If you have not created your LinkedIn account, you need to get that running. And you may be looking at LinkedIn and thinking, what good is this going to do? I don't know anyone. How am I supposed to link in when I don't know anyone to link in with? Well, when you first start in the industry, that's probably true. LinkedIn is more of a showcase for you. You can put your resume there. You can talk about the things you're working on in the expectation that eventually you'll be getting a job working in IT. But I have to tell you, knowing people in the industry has been one of the biggest factors in where I went in my career than perhaps any of those other elements. Knowing somebody at a place where you want to work is a very, very powerful hiring tool. Saying that you know someone who's already there, having a conversation with somebody who already works in a particular organization is very telling to the people doing the hiring, because now there's a connection to you. Now somebody knows you. They can vouch for you. You're not some flighty person that they're going to bring in on a Monday and is going to walk out at noon and never come back. Those things happen. As a hiring manager, I can tell you those things happen all the time. So it's important that you're hiring people you know, or that somebody in your organization knows. So that's why I say LinkedIn is a very important part of this. Start adding people you know that you have worked with into your LinkedIn. Add people that you meet. If you go to a Cisco user group meeting, if you go to a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting, go to a Microsoft user group meeting, and you meet some people and you say, oh, I've seen that place where you work. That's really interesting. I'd love to work somewhere like that. I'm looking for a job at the help desk. What do your help desk people need to know? Who should I talk to? Very often when you're in that situation, people say, you need to send me your resume directly because I will send it to HR, because most organizations have some type of employee referral program, so that if you hand your resume off to somebody in that company and that person gives it to HR and they hire you, you of course get a job and they get a little bit of money on their next paycheck, maybe after a number of months go by, but they can also make money. So sometimes people are very interested in getting your resume and being the one to submit you to an organization. Another great reason to link in with somebody. And you could say, oh, you need to do that. Throughout my career, I probably had about 20 jobs. And sometimes that job was working with one company, and I would have maybe 4 different jobs within that one company. You know, get a job, get a promotion. So you go from SE to senior SE, or you go from, marketing manager to director. Sometimes that happens. But every time I've moved in my career, except for the very first job I got working for a company that had no idea who I was. So they just hired me. I still don't know why, but they did. So from that point on, every other job I got in IT, I knew somebody who worked there. That kind of speaks very well for knowing people and getting the people networking side of this, making sure that those people are on your LinkedIn, that they are sending these things back and forth. That, I think that's a great way to keep up with where people are. And I have reached out to people I used to work with and say, I just heard about this new position opening up. I think you'd be perfect for it, just to let you know. Send me your resume and I'll pass along if you want. Those are good things to do as well. I often also tell people that if you are working on a resume and you're trying to get some feedback, Reddit has a great resume subreddit. They even tell you how to anonymize the information so that you can post your resume there, and people will give you feedback about your resume and things you might be able to change. I'd love to do it, but I just don't have the cycles to be able to go through and redline a bunch of resumes every day, because it does take time. But the people on this resume subreddit, that's a great way to do it. I also have a video. The link to the video is on this YouTube video description. I think it is. If it's not, we'll add it, which is 5 reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And I have another one, follow-up that I did, was 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. Both of those have 10 different tips that can help you. And I talk about the structure of a resume. I talk about how your resume should be customized to every employer you send it to. Let me say that again. Your resume should be customized for every employer you send it to. I explain why in the video. And in the second video, I talk about the importance of a cover letter, which I really never gave a lot of thought to until I started talking to HR professionals and until I became a hiring manager. And then I was reading through these cover letters. Most cover letters I got were a waste of space. It was just generic. They didn't spend any time on it. And in these videos, I show you how to create a cover letter that you could do in 10 minutes that is customized for that employer, that shows very specifically why you should have that job over anyone else. It's in the video. So that's why I did the videos, so that you'd have that ideas of things you could do to make that happen. I think that's probably some of the fundamentals of getting that job. Knowing technology, understanding operating systems, troubleshooting skills, those things are important. But unless you can get through the hiring process, those aren't going to help you very much. You almost have to spend as much time on your hiring strategy as you do the technology that you're working on. The goal, of course, when you're trying to get that job, you're not trying to be the expert of all experts. You just need to be better than anybody else who's sending in a resume. And there are some very fundamental things you can do to your resume that move it up in that list. And I put all of that in those 2 videos. So hopefully that can help you as you're trying to figure it out. Well, speaking of figuring it out, I think that's a good time for me to stop. I've been watching my screen flash. I apologize for those of you that were watching during the first half of the live stream, where occasionally the screen would flash a little bit. As I mentioned in the pre-show, I thought I'd fixed it. Well, clearly I had not. So I'm going to leave this up and running. I have some troubleshooting to do in the afternoon myself. Well, I already know one thing I've swapped out. So we swapped out the HDMI cable. What do we swap out next? Now we go to the SDI cable, which I think will be the next one. The video for that cover letter is in my YouTube channel, and it is called, I'm going to bring this up so that you can find it easily. 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. Let me type this in. Search across my channel. How about just resume? It is called 5 More Reasons Why Your Resume Keeps Getting Rejected. It's a follow-up to 5 Reasons Why Your Resume Keeps Getting Rejected. Both of those I think are pretty good. So you can go with both of those and see if they would help you, give you some tips and tricks. Again, it's these small little moves. And once you've done these small little changes, they end up being big changes. So maybe you can find some tips and tricks in there that might help you. And come back on Thursday. We're doing a Security Plus study group. And maybe I'll be able to tell you the story about how this is not flickering anymore on the Security Plus study group. Let's hope that's going to be the case. But in the meantime, I will be doing troubleshooting so that you don't have to. Thanks for joining us in the first part of this study group. Thanks for being here in the after show and your calls and your thank you for the super chats that you put it there. It's always nice to get feedback, and just thanks for being here and asking questions. We really could not do this without you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.